Loewe is currently dominating fashion, and they're easily one of my most requested videos to make because of that. As such, I've spent literally weeks researching the brand in the hopes of making a full biography as you guys have wanted. However, one thing stands out as completely unknowable: their origin. There is literally no information on it, so while my bigger, longer history of Loewe video can still be in production, let me walk you through the mysterious origin of Loewe to try to untwist some of the many mistruths currently out there about the brand. So, to begin, you should know that there is only one book ever published on Loewe, but because it's out of print, it literally costs £1,000 to buy online. There are 2 books in the works, one covering Jonathan Anderson's years only, and the other from this book series, which I don't find to be reliable. Therefore, the only book I had to go on and will have to go on in the foreseeable future is that $1,000 book. Fortunately, I was able to get my hands on the out-of-print book thanks to Ranura, but unfortunately, as we found out together, it was merely a picture book with no information. With that said, let's come at this from a reverse chronological order so you can experience the confusion in real time. So the first thing you should know is that there are actually 2 dates of foundation for Loewe, the most recent of which is 1872, at which time Enrique Lu Roseberg founded the company. The reason this is important is because upon his death in 1929, the company would be inherited by his son Enrique Loewe Hilton, who died in 1934, passing it on to his son Enrique Loewe Knapp. So it's important for our timeline to know that this family wholly owned the Loewe company at this time in 1929. However, this is where the mystery history already begins, as I've already said, commonly regurgitated mistruths about the company. Firstly, Enrique Lu Roseberg did not found the company. He may have registered it, that I cannot get a read on at all, there are no records at least that I could find, but the company did exist well before then. On the official Loewe website, it claims, quote, "Founded in Spain in 1846, we're approaching 178 years as one of the world's major luxury houses." This in itself is important because using terms like founded 1846 or founded 1872, if that is officially untrue, it would be illegal as it misleads customers. Therefore, we can assume that Loewe has some kind of documentation to suggest or prove that the latter 1872 date is not true. So, why then do so many resources claim that 1872 is the date of foundation? Well, that's because that's when Enrique Lu Roseberg joined the company, and it's obviously his family name that will go on to be the brand name. However, something else you should know about this is that it seems his name wasn't Enrique. He wasn't Spanish. He was actually German, and his name was Heinrich Loewe Roseberg, and may have even been born in Kassel, Germany, though that is unconfirmed. He did also use the name Enrique officially in Spain, as we know from this official paper from the king in 1905, where he's named D. Enrique Loewe. But this is an important distinction to make, purely from a curiosity standpoint. Who is he? How did he come to be a part of the company? And why did it end up taking his name over the actual founders' names? To dive into this, I tried to begin by gauging his age. So I went through birth records in Germany just to understand more about the man. However, the German Civil Status Act only came into force on the 1st of October 1874, so 2 years after he had already left for Madrid. So that was basically useless. Instead, I went through the Spanish census records, but they too have absolutely no record of someone with that name, despite civil registration records beginning in 1871, by which I mean you would expect them to at least have his death certificate in 1929, but no, they don't, or at least I couldn't find it. As such, this man remains a complete mystery. We do know his ancestors, Shiloh Loewe, who is his most well-known descendant, who is part of the current Loewe Foundation, And I wonder if she has some family stories or pictures, but other than that, we don't know anything about the man whose name will go above the door. I did also message Sheila to ask her about this, but as of yet, I've not had a response. I will tag her in this in an Instagram post, so hopefully she sees it. But thus far, in the research process, the history and the biography of Heinrich or Enrique Loewe Roseberg is a bit of a dead end. But of course, that raises another question, in that if he only joined in 1872, what name was above the door before it was Loewe? Actually, even in that case, Loewe was not above the door frame until 1892 when they first enlisted as E. Loewe in Cal Principe, which we do actually have a picture of if you'd like to see it. But it does also go to prove that even after Heinrich/Enrique joined the company, there was about 20 years where there was either no name over the door or it was Silva and Rivas. Now, this name is not confirmed at all. It's actually the worst reference in the whole research, actually. It comes from the German Wikipedia article on the brand, which does not have a direct reference for this name. But it does seem to be repeating something that is better referenced, Expansión, which is one of the oldest economic and business newspapers in Spain, beginning in 1986. With that said, Expansión does not give the name of the store explicitly, only giving the name of the two founders. So in honesty, I don't trust Wikipedia definitively that that is the name of the store. I think it's likely just because of the way that naming businesses usually go, but the fact that there's no actual reference to the Wikipedia article, I'd prefer to suggest simply that we truly don't know the name. This, I think, is the most likely scenario. I mean, as opposed to there just not being a name. As in 1997, Narciso Rodriguez, who was then the creative director of Loewe, said in an interview with WWD, which, in case you aren't familiar with it, is a very well-respected source in fashion, quote, "I've taken a look at all the logos since 1846. They're superb," which naturally would make us believe that there was at least a name, perhaps even a full logo, all the way dating back to 1846. Though, even with that said, I should also say that it was unlikely for any brand at this time to keep an archive. That's something that Karl Lagerfeld actually popularized after Patou was able to show him their archive of pre-war fabrics, and he fell in love with that, introducing it to both Fendi, Chloe, and Chanel as he worked in all of those places, and it just caught on from there. Even the Loewe book, Past, Present, and Future, only shows an archived amount of logos in their branding irons dating back to 1910. So I would be lying if I said I believe unequivocally that Loewe archive does go this far. It's possible, obviously, but because the first image that they have online, even past that, is 1892, it does make me question the validity of what he was saying. Obviously, I also messaged him to inquire about what he meant, just in case. But to be honest, his socials are unclear if it's him or if it's his fragrance company's team, so I'm not holding my breath. In that regard, it does seem that this would just be a totally lost element of a company's history. Which makes me think perhaps that's exactly why Heinrich/Enrique is so often touted as the founder, just because it was his name above the door that we first know about. But frankly, he was not the founder. He was merely inducted into the business 26 years after it had already begun. To quote Loewe's own website, quote, "Enrique Loewe Roseberg, a German leather craftsman who settled in Madrid, is impressed by the artisans' know-how and the quality of their materials and decides to join forces with the workshop in 1872. Combining Enrique Loewe's precision and technical methodology with the creativity and inimitable leather craftsmanship of the Spanish artisans, Loewe was born." Born here obviously being an interesting choice of words, reading between the lines of this, it just seems to raise more questions. Why don't they name the original founders? Why was his name chosen over the other founders whom he joined? Why does Loewe claim that he was also a leather maker when I could find no records to that effect? Of course, this isn't me trying to put Loewe now on blast. This history really has nothing to do with the business today because it's been through so many iterations and is so removed from the foundational drama. But I do find just the framing, the actual word usage, to be really interesting. Almost like they're gingerly stepping around how the brand was actually founded. Proof of this mainly because despite their names not being represented once on the Loewe website, at least that I could find, we actually do know the names, or at least two of the names, of the original founders. The names we know were José Silva and Florencio Rivas. It was these two men, at least, who Heinrich/Enrique met upon his moving to Madrid. So this brings me back to how in the space of 20 years did the company go from theirs to 100% owned by Heinrich/Enrique Loewe Roseberg. I originally guessed, and this is just one of my two theories, I will go over both, that it was a hostile takeover. I'm guessing that he literally stole the company from Silva and Rivas, and he did it because he could see the potential in what they were doing. They must have already been very well respected, as by 1905 they would go on to receive the Spanish royal warrant from King Alfonso XIII, and it may have been even the first company ever to receive it in leather goods in Spain, in fact. So clearly they have a reputation there. They would have served high-ranking clientele before the royal warrant. And just in my opinion, that would provide a person motive to steal the company. My other theory is that he just split from the men and paid for the Cal Princip store to put his name above the store and just illegally used the date that the actual founders began to make himself seem better, which does sound possible, but surely being that it was so close to the original store, you would think they would have been a bit more commotion about it, or at least that the men would have contested the date of the foundation. I don't know, it makes me think that there's something strange there that either we just don't know or that they don't want us to know. I'm not sure, I have no idea. In any regards, they're just theories, but they're not my last and final theory either. So let's get to that and let's continue on with the reverse chronological order, because before the Cal Princip y Loewe store opened in 1892 and before Heinrich/Enrique came to Madrid, it was Silva and Rivas who had a workshop on Cal Lobo, which is now called Echegaray Street. So who were the men who actually founded the brand in 1846 and why did they found it? Well, at least we do know two of their names. We know José Silva and Florencio Rivas. So I looked them up in the Spanish census as best as I could. But, like I mentioned before, the Spanish civil registration records began in 1871. So actually, again, this is quite unreliable. Because of that, I found nothing on Florencio. This man is the only man that came up, and he was in Mexico for most of his life, so it definitely wasn't him. There doesn't seem to be even a death record on him, as far as I could find. While Jose had countless possible finds, of which only two were actually viable. The first of which is a huge stretch, but it's technically possible he was actually a nobleman. I highly doubt a nobleman ran a small workshop in a side street, but I did think it was funny that the names and the dates matched up only for him and one other person, so I thought I'd include him anyway. But the second possible option is this chap. Now, this man would have been 70 years old when founding the company in 1846, and he even died in 1863, which would give reason as to how the business ended up as Loewe's. Maybe it wasn't a hostile takeover after all. Maybe it was murder. No, just kidding. Maybe the two actual founders were just old men and genuinely passed away, leaving Loewe the skills taught in leather making and, of course, the company. Oh, okay. So, unscripted, but before we go on with this, you should definitely know that since this video was made for Patreon, which is always a month early, I have actually been in contact with this man's descendants, and it is definitely not him. He was a duke and a very important person in Spain. It's very unlikely he had a leather goods shop. So it's not him, but I will continue to look. And for now, just know where I was at in the process at this time. I think it's still an interesting video regardless, but yeah, that's where I am at the moment. The next word is however. It sounds a bit strange, but let's just go with it. However, theoretically, should this be the case, and this is actually the person that founded Loewe before Loewe, this man had 3 children and a wife. So why, in that case, did they not inherit a share of the business like the Loewe children did? Well, this actually is quite clear. The wife had died in 1808, so actually she had died long before he had even opened his shop, and his children had died in 1865, 1885, and unknown. And even of their combined 6 known grandchildren, only 50% survived until after 1905 anyway, so that could give a reason as to why, if this is the correct man and this is the correct family, Loewe himself was able to split away from their families. Perhaps just their grandchildren did not want a small leather goods store on some random back street in Spain. It's not exactly a theory that's hard to believe. But because this theory, if correct, ties up so many loose threads, I'm honestly inclined to believe it. I'll obviously do a deeper dive into their history to find out some more if it is the correct people, which I'll just do off screen and I'll report back in the next video if anything comes of it. But for now, what does seem clear, even if that's not true, is that these 2 men, Jose Silva and Florencio Rivas, had their store on Cal Lobo since 1846. Now, there's obviously no photos of the store, but I can show you what Echegaray Street looks like now, formerly known as Cal Lobo, as it was on this street somewhere that the actual first store opened and did remain there for the initial 20 years, which, going all the way back, negatively chronologically, finally brings me to my very last question, and it's actually a question I do have an answer for. Why did they establish a store in the first place, especially if it was 2 men in their 70s? Well, the reason seems to actually be quite clear. So in 1846, there were 2 royal marriages within very, very close proximity, both being held on the 10th of October 1846. Firstly, there was the wedding of Queen Isabella II of Spain to her cousin Francisco de Assis de Bourbon, Duke of Cadiz, and secondly, on the same day, but at a totally separate wedding, of her younger sister Luisa Fernanda to Antoine, Duc de Montpensier, the youngest son of King Louis-Philippe of France. Now, these marriages were really important for the history of Spain, but I'm skipping over that because for Loewe specifically, the impact that they had was demand. Both weddings were very eagerly anticipated all across the nation, and it came with a great need for gifting items like tobacco cases, leather goods, and decorative boxes. Now, Loewe would go on to be a leather and fur workshop, but actually this was really their origin, providing small gifty things to meet the demand around those weddings, which may provide a reason for that old man Jose to have started a business. If he had the skill in exactly one of these categories, or even if he was just a tradesman trying to make a quick extra dime, this would prove to be a great opportunity. If that is the case, all the cogs fall into place. I just can't say it for certain. Of course, when I do make my bigger Loewe full biography, I do hope to have some of the answers to the many questions I've raised in this video, and hopefully someone from Loewe can help me look at those archives that Rodriguez said existed. I would just adore to get some more information on the brand, anything more than is online currently, because there's practically nothing, and I'm mostly left with more questions. Thank you so much for watching this video. I know it's a bit strange for me to do something like this, but please do like and subscribe to the channel for the future Loewe deep dive, which will come eventually, I promise. If you like this video, I do actually have a similar video on my beauty channel about the mysterious origin of Sephora, which I do highly recommend. And as always, thank you so much to my patrons over on Patreon for their ongoing support, some of whose names are on the screen now. All content used in this video is done so in accordance with the principles of fair use. However, if you have any concerns, please contact me directly at contact@understitch.co.uk.